Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather and today I'm going to be doing the in or out tag. This was created by Rick McDonald and I was tagged by Maria from Read Fine Books. So I haven't watched this video in a while, so I don't remember what the questions are, but it's kind of a simple one. I love ones that don't require you to answer books and you just kind of get to talk about reading type stuff that I feel like most of us can relate to. So if you'd like any of these questions and you want to let me know what your answer is, be sure to do that down below in the comments. I always read and reply to every single one unless it's like literally spam. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started with this tag. Number 1, read the last page first. So something you might not know, so like I always thought this was really cute with when I watched Doctor Who, he would rip out the last page of the book so that it would be like the book never ends and he can always have that story and that potential and kind of get to write it his own way. So I really liked that. I do not rip out pages and I do not read the entire last page before reading the book. However, what I do often do is I will read the last sentence of a book and then I will go back and read the first sentence of the book. And so I generally do that. It kind of gives me a little bit of a feel for it just with the two sentences. And it's just something kind of fun. It's definitely changed my reading experience sometimes. So one time I read it as it was going to be like a very paranormal type feel with the ending, and it was not. Like, it was not. But it definitely changed the way I was reading the story when I read it the first time. Another time, it was the first book in an 11-book series. And the last sentence of the first book was, "And I die." If you know what book I'm talking about, let me know down below in the comments and I'll be like, yep, that's the one. And I was like, okay, there's 11 books though, so I kind of figured out how that series was going to continue considering that that character died, so that wasn't too much of a spoiler, but it was definitely a lot of fun to get to that point. So I am going to go with yes, reading the last page first. I'm good with that. I like doing that. It's just fun. And then, but I really don't like reading like the whole last page, just like the last sentence. So we're kind of putting in that caveat because I already do that. Enemies to lovers. Heck yes, this is one of my favorite tropes. Now, if it's like an actual bully romance where someone is being like verbally and emotionally abusive to the other person, then no, because that's toxic. But if it is like an enemies to lover with equal power dynamics and they're both kind of like quick-witted, that sort of thing, then I can go for it. So like The Cruel Prince is kind of my level with that. Anything past that I would put into the emotional abuse category and I'd be like, heck no. So that's kind of my limit for enemies to lovers. Dream sequences. I think that they should be used rarely and it needs to be identified to the reader that it's actually a dream sequence. This can work sometimes if it's a paranormal book and the character has some sort of ability like seeing the future, then I'll appreciate the dream sequences. Or if someone, maybe it's an enemies to lovers and they haven't admitted to themselves that they're like super attracted to this other person, they could have a dream about like making out with them, which clues the reader into, oh no, things are going to change. So yeah, I'm going to go with it's okay, but limited. Love triangles, I'm going to go with no. I really like to know who they're going to wind up with in the beginning so that I can really fall for that person. And oftentimes love triangles are it's very easy to kind of tell, or at least you think that you kind of know who they should wind up with. And I'm like, okay, if it doesn't make sense where the reader themselves is like, I cannot choose between these two people, then what is the point of it? So I'm going to go with no for love triangles. Cracked spines. No, especially if it's a paperback. I don't want it to have a cracked spine. Nowadays, people know how to do like floppy paperbacks, so I really enjoyed those. So I'm going to go with no for the cracked spines. Back to my small town. Yes, I mean, that's like a romance trope. I'm totally fine with it, so I'm in for that. monsters are real people, yeah, I can go for that. And I like reading like alien stuff, so it's all good. No paragraph breaks. That is a heck no. I do not like text heavy books. I can look into a book, see kind of like where the white space is, and if there's not a lot of white space, then that is telling me that the writer is long-winded, that it's going to have a slow pace, be a very narrative heavy book, which for me slows things down and makes it boring. I like stuff that's like fast, almost to a breakneck pace. So like, even if I'm reading a contemporary romance, I want it to have the pacing of a thriller. Like, that's how I like all my books. I like them short, snappy, like 3 to 7 page chapters. I do not like 25 page chapters, and I need those paragraph breaks. Now when it comes to like page breaks, where it's got like a little emblem in between the paragraphs, I don't want more than like one of those in a chapter. It just doesn't look that great in a formatting sense. And I'm just like, why not just make it a new chapter? So I feel like you should only use paragraph breaks when that next section is like, the events are really closely related to the previous stuff. It's a logical jump in time that you need to indicate, but the passage that follows is too short to make an individual chapter. That's when I think you should use page breaks. So, next one is multi-generational sagas. I'm going to go with no. I can do that in movies, but again, I am not a literary reader, and I do not like things that take forever, and generational type stuff, it's probably going to be written in a literary style, in past tense, in third person, and that is not my go-to, and I don't like that genre, so I'm going to go with no. Rereading, yes. Do I actually do it? Rarely. But once I've knocked out all the books that I currently own, then I would like to be able to reread the ones that I really enjoyed, which is what I'll be keeping on my shelves. So, yes for rereading, but don't often do it. Artificial intelligence. Heck yes, I love artificial intelligence, especially if it's like really funny and kind of becomes its own character. Then I really enjoy artificial intelligence. Drop caps, yes, but I have one caveat to this. I don't like drop caps when it's the start of dialogue. I want that beginning quote mark to still be in the front, but I want it to be, I want it to look right. I want it to be small, but not as small as a regular quote mark. It needs to look like it belongs with the drop cap. And the other thing is, if that drop cap is like 3 lines long, but the paragraph that it starts is only 2 lines long, then I want that second paragraph to not be indented. I don't like that. I want that indent to go away so that it's flat, where it would normally start if that drop cap was not there. It just looks better to me. It looks better. So when I'm editing, I make sure it does that. Because I don't like it when it's like 2 indented spots to start that next paragraph because the drop cap was there. I don't like the way that looks. So no. Happy endings. Yes, I don't want the story to not have a happy ending, because if it doesn't, then what was my payout? Now, it can have a tragic ending, but have significant character development. That was the point of the story. So this happens with a lot of like Nicholas Sparks books, where a character will die or there's not a happy ending, but like the journey was the important part. So I can appreciate stories that don't have happy endings. Or like horrors, for instance, would be another one where it makes sense to not have a happy ending, but maybe like your favorite person survives. But yeah, in general, I'm going to go with I definitely want and expect a happy ending. Number 14, plot points that only converge at the end. This can work sometimes, but there needs to be a lot of threads throughout the book where you're continuing to ask for these answers. So an instance of this where things don't really come together until like the very end would be sometimes with more literary leaning books like Other Birds, where it has these small individual threads and you've got a little bit of the paranormal aspects happening throughout the story. The setting is a big major character, and there's not really a lot of plot. It's more so character development and relationships, stuff like that. But you kind of get like this unexpected ending that's built upon all the threads that have been previously laid. So I like that. When it comes to romances, I don't like when they wait until the 80% mark to admit their feelings, because then it's like, oh, we've admitted our feelings, so now we're just going to do an epilogue for like 6 months later, and that's the end of the book. I'm like, no, I read this to get the payoff. I want to have a couple of chapters of them being happy and in love together. I want to experience that. I don't want to just read 300 pages to get that payoff and it only be 2 chapters worth. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. So I'm going to go with out for that one. I want there to be constant reveals that are happening throughout the book that keep me engaged. Next is Detailed Magic System. It can get bogged down, but I think sometimes when you understand how things are working, you can anticipate how a character will be able to skirt whatever whatever conflict is coming their way. And that can be something that's fun to do. It causes you to engage more in the story. You're like using your brain. I like stories where I have to think a bit. So one of the stories that I would say was one where I had to think would be the Fifth Wave. I really like that one because I was trying to figure out, is there some sort of manipulation going on here? Are these people really what they say they are? And I just had a lot of fun trying to figure that out. And also, once I figured it out, how the characters were going to react to the big reveals. So I like thinking novels. Magic System could also apply to stuff that's not magical, but that has to do with like sci-fi elements. So an example of this would be the Skyward series by Brandon Sanderson. When it comes to flying the ships, there's like 3 really cool abilities that these ships can do. And if you don't understand what those abilities are and how they work, then you can't quickly visualize those when the characters are in battle situations, which is one of the reasons why I want to go back and read book 1 and book 2 before continuing on with the rest of the series. And it's also a reason why I plan on waiting until the 5th book comes out to reread the series, so that I can have those things, you know, at the forefront of my mind, so that I can really visualize them and experience the book knowing how to do all of that stuff. But there's also something really cool about a soft magic system as well, where you don't necessarily know everything that's going to happen. You don't necessarily have reasons for how the characters came to be and have their abilities. So like a paranormal story with vampires, you might not know the origin of the vampires, how they exist, why they can do certain things, but we have like this understanding of this is what vampires are, this is what they can do, and you just kind of accept it and enjoy the story. So I can definitely see both, but I am going to go with Detailed Magic System because I think it just adds a little bit more to the book. It makes you have to suspend your disbelief a little bit less often, because there is some sort of like touchstone in the real world that explains how they're able to do this, which then makes you feel like if you were in that situation, you would be able to do those things as well. So I really like that. Next is Classic Fantasy Races. I don't know exactly what that is supposed to mean. I think that with fantasies, there should be some still diversity, but at the same time, I think it's really cool to have a fantasy that has diversity, but it focuses on, like, it doesn't necessarily have, like, racism doesn't really exist in those worlds. So there's diversity, but everyone really is, like, equal. So I would prefer that as, like, an escapism type thing. with the fantasy world. And like, if I was a person too that was a minority and I was just wanting to read fiction for escapism, I wouldn't want to pick up a fantasy book and have a bunch of racism in it, because that would be what I'm trying to escape. So I would want like the joy, the idealistic world, that sort of thing. That's what I would want in the fantasy. So I'm gonna go with that. But yes, definitely like diversity, but also like if there's different types of aliens and stuff like that too, that's more like a different species type deal, then I really enjoy that as well. It's just fun, especially if it gets adapted into a movie or TV show where they can like have the full makeup and all that kind of stuff. Would be really cool. So like Star Trek, how they have all the different like species from the different planets, I think that's really cool. Then we have Unreliable Narrators. I do not like this. I like to know what's really happening. Otherwise, I'm like, you just wasted my time. I don't like that you're an unreliable narrator. I don't know who to trust. There are some circumstances where this can kind of work and has worked. One of them would be A World Without You by Beth Revis. It has a character that is in a psychiatric facility, and you don't know if the things that they are seeing and thinking are or have really happened, or if it's something to do with their mental illness as like a coping mechanism, or they're kind of imagining these things. So it can work in that sort of case where I know, based off of the premise of the book, that there could be some sort of thing that I'm not really getting to see, but the character themselves believes everything that they're telling in their narration. So, but on a general standpoint, I'm going to go with no. I do not like unreliable narrators. Evil protagonist. Again, if I know that they're an evil protagonist, if I know that this is like the villain of the story, I can get down with it. I can get down with the evil one. So like Marissa Meyer, when she did the one Fairest that had to do with the Lunar Queen, I actually really liked that book, even though a lot of people didn't. I liked getting to see the reasons why she became the way she was and what her motivations were. So I really enjoyed that. Another one would be like Heartless, also by Marissa Meyer, where you know that this character is going to undergo a like a big character arc, and it's an origin story for how they became evil. Again, I can go for that, but I know going in that that is going to happen. In a thriller, it can be really cool to not know, especially if there's a romance plotline going in, because if you know that it is, then you kind of think that the character's stupid for falling for the other person that's going to wind up being evil. And so, but you get to explore all of those. You wouldn't feel the way that they feel. You would just think they're kind of dumb if you knew ahead of time that that person was a bad guy. But if you don't know that they're a bad guy, you can really fall into it and like be falling in love with the guy at the same time, and then be like, oh crap, now we're getting some red flags here. What the heck is going on? So an example of a book that I read recently that does that is Murdered at 17. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. So yeah, but then there's other times where you don't find out that they're evil, or maybe they're not evil, but they're being kind of used and manipulated by another powerful figure that is like the very present villain of the story, and then they choose to betray the people that they were aligned with in order to do what this person is saying. So for that case, I would think of like the Red Queen. And it's kind of cool to have like an aha moment, but especially if there's like a love triangle, and there kind of was in the Red Queen, I had stopped shipping the character with the one that wound up to not be the betrayer, and I was shipping this character with the person who was the betrayer. And so I didn't like that, because then I didn't have any feelings anymore for the other one, because I had cut that off and was pursuing the second relationship. Now, I don't know what happens at the end of the series. I kind of just DNF'd the series. I haven't picked it up. I had read the novella collection, and it literally, I was like pulling at my hair. It was so frustrating. I just did not like the writing at all. So there was magic in the Red Queen, but I just hated the novella collection with a passion. I was like literally pulling at my hair. It was so bad. But anyway, so I'm gonna go with no. I don't like evil protagonists. I'm gonna go with if I had to choose one or the other, I'm gonna go with out. I'm out. I don't want it. Then we have the chosen one. I think that that's fine, but it needs to be realistic. So I want that chosen person to be like a very good person, and I also want their skills before they realize that they are the chosen one to suit whatever they need to do. So if I've got like this nerdy, bullied science geek type person, and then they get thrown into this world, they are the chosen one who is going to save everyone, and they're using skills that they had prior to being picked as the chosen one, and I get to see them use those things that they were bullied for, like all that scientific knowledge and stuff, then I am totally down for that. So I'm going to go in for the chosen one. Then we have when the protagonist dies. I'm going to go with no. I do not want my protagonist to die. It's kind of like an unwritten rule that the main character will live. In most books, they're gonna live. Unless it's like a thriller or something where you're like, okay, they could die at the end, but then who's gonna take over telling the story? But yeah, I'm gonna go with out. I do not want my protagonist to die. Everyone else can die. I don't want them to die. I also don't want their love interest to die, because that's freaking heartbreaking. So I am totally out for that one. And I have temporarily DNF'd series. I'm talking to you, Divergent. When I find out that a significant character dies, I'm just like, why did you have to ruin this for me? So that series has been out a long time, so I think everyone knows who I'm talking about, but I'm not going to say it because I don't want to spoil it for you if you don't know. But yeah, a significant character dies. And so I was like, I don't want to read that. Then we have really long chapters. I've already touched on this. I dread and despise long chapters. I'm talking to you, Cassandra Clare and Sarah J. Maas, with your 25 to 30 page chapters. I am not a fan. I am not a fan. It slows down the pacing. It doesn't give me those like happy joy serotonin releases, my what I call accomplishment brain tingles from finishing a chapter when it literally takes me an hour to do so, because I'm a slow reader. I don't want to only be getting that little shot of serotonin boost every hour while reading a book. I would rather be getting it like every 15 minutes. So I want you to shorten them chapters to like 3 to 7 pages. That is my sweet spot. You can go up to 10. After 10 pages of a chapter, it not being ended, I'm going to start flipping forward, see how many I've got left to go. And if it's more than like 3 more pages, I'm probably going to put it down for the day. That's just how I am. So I'm like, no. And that's why sometimes when it comes to chunkers and people that write long chapters, I'm like, screw this. I'm not reading it physically. I'm going to listen to the audiobook because I just ain't got time for that. Now we go on to French flaps. I have no idea what French flaps are. I've never heard of that before. So I have absolutely no idea what French flaps are. Do I need to look this sucker up? I guess I will. Wait one. Okay, so this is like a regular dust jacket, except for instead of it having like a half flap on the inside, it's more like a full page flap. If I had to choose between the two, I really don't know, because sometimes when it comes to like the first 50 pages of the book, I might not use a bookmark. I might just use the little flap. And if it was a full flap, like the French flap, it would probably cause that to become more, I don't know how to describe it, like more rounded, more puffy, and not as like flat against it. So I don't think I would like it to become distorted in that way. But at the same time, it would be more likely for it to stay put when it's just on there normally. However, I remove the dust jackets when I'm reading books. If they're not like library books or something, I just remove the dust jackets so that I don't damage it at all. So it doesn't really matter to me all that much. Now, sometimes there's paperbacks that have flaps. And in that case, I would prefer it to be the French flap style, so that there's not like, the thickness would be equal for the whole book and not have it where you almost have like a little line dent in the front and back with regular flaps. So I would prefer French flaps when it comes to that. Hope that answers the question. Next, we have Deckled Edges. All right, so I guess I'll show you what a deckled edge looks like if you don't know what I'm talking about. So the My Lady Jane series all has deckled edges. You can kind of see they're like kind of cut differently, and it makes it easier to maybe flip the page. However, I don't flip pages from the middle. I don't do the whole like press down and move. I go to the top corner and flip. So I don't need deckled edges. Not only that, but I feel like they would just get more frayed over time. And so I'm going to go with no for deckled pages, unless it is a classic. Because if it's a classic, this does kind of have like an older feel to it. So with a classic, that like adds to the aesthetic. And you almost want it to be kind of rough. But also, when books are deckled edges, usually the page texture itself is more coarse. Or more coarse, whatever you call it. It's like a rougher page. And I have what do you call it? Kind of an aversion to that. I'm really particular about textures. So I don't like the textures of this book. It makes my hands feel like they're dirty. So I really do not like the feel of this. I like smooth textbook smooth pages. I really enjoy, and like the super black text. I really like that. But yeah, I don't like the coarse feeling of this. It makes me like want to wear gloves or something. It just makes me feel dirty. I'm the same way when it comes to food. I'm weird with texture, so I could like something but not like the texture and therefore not eat it. So that's something that's very common. It might not sound common, but it's very common with people that are atypical. Our brains just work differently, and that can be one of the things, is like an aversion to certain textures, sounds, fabrics. It's like we're getting too many sensations, so it becomes overwhelming. So I don't like it. But anyway, next we have signed copies by the author. Yes. However, I'm kind of moving away from having authors sign them out to me individually, because if I wind up not liking the book, then I can't really sell it at that point, because I would need to find someone else that has my same name to give that book to. So what I've kind of do now is that I just have the author just strictly sign their name, unless it's an author who I've read from before and I know that I'm either going to enjoy their book, or I would keep it on my shelf simply because it's them, even if I don't wind up liking the book. So that's kind of how I've been doing recently, not having the authors sign their name unless I've already read a couple of their books and know I'm gonna keep that book forever. So, and sometimes I have books, when they are signed out to me, they're super unique. Like, it's a signature that author has never done with anybody else. Like, I've got one where the author drew me a birthday cake on the inside. So, because it was my birthday when I saw her. I'll show you it. It's really cute. Okay, so I pulled out a couple that were unique signatures. So, like, if I have a really good interaction with the author and we talk about something, sometimes they'll write me one that's, like, specific to me. So this one says, Heather, great meeting you. Best of luck with your fabulous ideas. Because I had gotten an idea that I was telling Ella James about, and she was telling me that I needed to talk to Entangled, because she thought that they would definitely publish it. It was a dark Cinderella retelling where instead of her just cleaning up the house, the family owns a crematorium, so that's where she gets the ash nickname from, because it's bodies. It's ash that she's sweeping up, not just ash from a fireplace. And there's like some blood stuff in there, and there's vampires in the book. Like, there's some stuff in that series, and she was like, yeah, you need to like talk to Entangled because I think they would publish it. Another one is Teresa Kay. We roomed with each other at a writing conference, and I had started reading her book because I wanted to get to know more about her since we were going to be sharing a room. And she said, Heather, you guessed half the plot, but I hope you enjoy the rest. So I'd read like 2 chapters, and then I told her what I thought was going to happen, who the love interest was going to be, why they were going to do certain things. And she was like, yeah, you guessed like half the book. Another one was CJ Redwine, who I've seen a lot because she used to live in this area. And so this book, I accidentally stole it. I accidentally stole it at a book signing thing. They were doing, what do you call it? They were doing like panels. And so we had been talking, and I wound up getting the book, but I was running off to the panel, and I had already put this, like, I guess I had put it in under my arm or in my bag. I can't remember what I did. I did pay for it the same day, and then I went back and told her what I did, and she thought it was hilarious. So it's like our ongoing joke that I stole her book. But anyway, she said, the one part that's like everybody gets was Heather, step out of the shadows. Because normally authors will come up with a phrase that they'll put in all the books so that they don't have to overthink it. So generally they sign the same thing for everyone. But then it said, P.S. This book called your name because there was a joke where there was an inside joke that we had where she was like, Heather! Heather! And I took the book. So I was like, she's like, the book is coming. It's coming. So that was really funny. So I took that. And one time, like the next year, I'd made her, because she let me interview her as well. So I'd interviewed her, and for like a video with an older channel it doesn't exist anymore, but it was like 45 minutes. And she was getting on to me because I didn't know Tom Hiddleston. When she said his name, I didn't think anything about it. And she was like, Loki! And I was like, oh, okay. So I made her favorite dessert, which was lemon tarts. And then I printed off Loki. And I like stuck it on the container that I gave it to her. So she was taking pictures with it and everything. Another one, this one was really cool. So this was the one that had the birthday cake. And it says, for Heather, thanks so much for being here on your birthday. And this was Lauren Oliver for Delirium. So there's a couple more that are like that, but these are just the 4 that I remembered that were like that. So I love it when authors do it and it's something special. I get kind of disappointed if I have a connection with them and they don't write me something unique. It's like, I already had an arc in this book. I only bought it so that you could write something personal in it. But sometimes it just doesn't happen. But that's okay. Anyway, next question. Dog earring pages. So I will admit I used to do this as a kid. I definitely used to dog ear pages with like library books and all that kind of stuff. Now normally these were older and they had already been dog-eared because we're talking about like elementary school. That's just kind of what kids do. They don't use bookmarks. So yeah, I would dog-ear the crap out of stuff. Same thing with textbook pages. I was always dog-earing that. I would always undog-ear it. Like when we were done with that thing, I would undog-ear it. But I think we could even like highlight in some of our textbooks and stuff. So I definitely would do that. So anyway, yeah, I'm going to go with no though, because now if someone were to dog ear one of my pages, I would be ticked off, and I do not dog ear anymore, but I will do the flap thing where I put the flap inside, but only to the point to where it doesn't warp the dust jacket cover. Next and last is chapter titles instead of numbers. If there's going to be chapter titles, I want there to also be numbers, because numbers are easier to remember than chapter titles. Sometimes what I do that's unique to my books is I will have the chapter number. I will also have a chapter title, but the chapter title correlates to a song title that's on the book's playlist. So sometimes you can just look at my playlist and listen to the songs. That's going to give you the tone of the book. It might hint at specific details that happen in that chapter. It's just going to give you a little bit extra that you don't normally get with a book. So it's a playlist, but it's a very specific playlist that goes with the individual chapters. And so like one of my books, I formatted it recently, and I actually added in the music symbol, and then I hyperlinked the music symbol, and when you click on the hyperlink in the ebook, it will take you to the Spotify song for that chapter. So it's just something really cool and unique. But anyway, thank you, Maria, for tagging me in this. That was Maria from Read Fine Books. And I am going to tag, I mean, everybody can do it. But off the top of my head, someone who's I would really want to see is going to be Books and Ashes, or Books and Ash. I'm sorry, my brain is like kind of gone today. But yeah, I'm tagging you. And I feel like Nicole might enjoy this as well, from Dusty Book Sniffers. So y'all are going to be my two main ones, but I also try to tag everyone. So you can look down below if I remember to do it. A couple of these tag videos I have not remembered to do it. But if you have a BookTube channel and you're subscribed to me where I can see it, I added you to a list. So you're tagged. Just look down below. And yeah, y'all go do the tag. I'm just like spitting everywhere. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I really enjoyed this, and I do plan on starting to make Tag Tuesdays a regular thing, especially because y'all are just so awesome. Y'all are always tagging me and stuff. So I have like 6 more that I've been tagged in. And then there's 2 that I want to do that I was not tagged in. So one of them was from Ash's channel, their last tag video. I thought that one was really unique and fun. And another one was the Abbott Elementary, because I love that show so much. I am definitely like Jacob, I think that's his name. That is like me. And so yeah, I really like that show, so I would like to do the tag. But that's all I have for y'all. I will see y'all later. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, share with your friends. And that's all. Bye!